Today I'm here with Bennet Genugten, and we are going to be talking about leadership lessons with a pro athlete. And we've discussed quite a bit about what got him to the place he is today. He sold $25 million in real estate this last year, and we know that anybody that does that volume of business has overcome quite a bit. So you were born in the Netherlands.
Yeah, thanks, Leann.
What area?
So I was born near Eindhoven, little tiny town called Zonnebreugel.
Oh, so you even have the accent.
I tried, yeah. So I raced overseas a little bit, and I went back and learned a bit of Dutch.
Cool.
And I heard it growing up around the house. So my accent's okay. My vocabulary is pretty bad.
So you have a dad that's Dutch, and you have a mom that's American,
Mm-hmm.
and you moved to the States when you were how old?
So I was a year old. My brothers were 2 and 3, and we moved back to Bloomington, Indiana, where my mom was from.
Okay, cool. And so you went to school, and you started getting into sports at what age?
I was always active. Like I said, I had 2 older brothers that terrorized me, and I was really small compared to them. And I'm 6'2" now, but I had to learn to grow fast because
Okay.
they would wail on me otherwise.
What else happened when you were growing up that really gave you that piece of drive? Because what we know, and if you've read Success Magazine or you've read other articles about really successful people, one thing that we know is that they have an axe to grind. And so what happened to you growing up that caused you to really push forward and be able to achieve things like becoming a professional athlete, which we're going to talk about in a minute?
So I'd say I had a really good and happy childhood, but we grew up of humble means.
Okay.
So we spent some years on welfare when I was really little. My mom was going back to school, finishing up her degree. My dad was launching his own business. And it was a tough couple of years. We used to have something called Garbage Due Friday, where the welfare check hadn't come in, and it was whatever was left in the fridge went in the pot, and there we went.
Yeah.
Obviously those were only a couple of years, but I think when that's happening at age 3 and 4, it's kind of transformative.
Of course.
And I've had if you look at my resume and things we'll talk about, I've had a sort of burning desire to achieve since then. And it's served me well.
Never go hungry, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
I understand that. So then when did you get into any kind of athletics?
So we played a lot of sports, soccer and whatever normal kids do. But because our family was also Dutch, we did a lot of cycling and cycle touring.
How old were you when you first started cycling?
I think I got my first road bike when I was 12.
Cool.
It was like an old Trek, about $100.
How much would you ride back then? About how many miles?
So when I was little, I didn't have any of the normal gear, and I had this real beater old steel bike. It was about 40 pounds. And I wear these Umbro soccer shorts. They would go flaring up in the wind. And I would do maybe 30 miles a day out in the hills.
Wow.
Around Bloomington.
Okay. So you didn't get the bug then to become a professional cyclist?
We didn't know that was a thing.
Oh, okay.
We didn't know you could race bikes. We just liked doing it.
And was your dad riding with you too during this time?
It's for my mom.
Okay, your mom.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we would do these long rides. So when I was 14, we rode from Bloomington to Colorado, which is a good couple thousand miles.
Wow.
One summer. So you bring your tent in the back and stop every day and do 100 miles a day or so.
I mean, did you complain like little kids?
I loved it.
Really?
I was 14.
Okay. Cruising around with your brothers and
Yep.
your mom, and you just kind of, that's what you guys did. Did you camp during that time then? You said you had a tent? So, okay, cool.
So when we had my mom with us, we'd stay at the hotels quite a bit more.
Oh,
She'd bring
okay.
the credit card.
Yeah, that's the kind of mom I like.
Right. So then the following summer, my brother and I took a trip, just the 2 of us and a friend of ours. So I was 15, and we rode from Canada to Mexico down the Rockies, so all off-road.
And how old were you when you did that?
I was 15.
Wow. Did you have adult supervision?
We didn't.
Were you guys bad kids?
No, we would have been. I got 1 beer on the
Were you
trip.
guys fire starters at all?
No.
Okay.
It was
good kids.
You're so far out in the wilderness, you wouldn't see other people for a week at a time.
Wow.
You see bears and cougars and things. So
Yeah.
we had to be really careful, and that was very transformative as well. I came back.
Wow.
Kind of I guess I'll call that a coming of age. I came back a man from that one.
I love it.
Yeah.
And so when did you get the bug to be, and you knew in that moment, I want to be a professional cyclist?
So it was on that trip that we learned that you could be a professional bike rider. We met one. He was doing the same tour, and I think he was an old English guy. I say old, he's my age now. But he told us all his old racing stories, and we were just enthralled. And I said to my brother at that time, I was like, this is so cool. We got to do this.
Yeah.
So I went home, and I was on the swim team, and I was talking to my swim coach. And he said, well, yeah, you're a talented athlete. I was captain of the swim team. And so...
And what we know is that success leaves clues. Of course you were the captain.
Right.
We know that because people that want to achieve just constantly are pushing in the different arenas. So you were captain, and then you went back to your coach. Go ahead.
Yeah, and he had a background in bike racing and triathlon, and he knew I was a rider and said, well, he was also a PhD at Indiana University. So I had an opportunity to do a VO2 max test, which is a real standard baseline test of black and white. Are you good or not?
Do any athletes do this, or only cyclists?
Most endurance athletes will do it.
So runners,
cyclists, yeah, all of us.
Oh,
right.
Okay.
And it's a
never heard of it before today.
for most people that don't ever do it, it's actually really painful.
Oh, really?
They stick you on a treadmill or a bike, and you got to go as hard as you can until you fail.
Okay.
And it's tough.
Okay.
So before the test, my coach said, Bennet, you're super talented. You're going to score really high. I was kind of anxious.
Yeah.
Lance Armstrong scores an 80 VO2 max. You'll probably get a 60 or 70 because you're pretty good. And he said, if you get a 50, just go play golf.
Oh my gosh.
And I scored a 52. And I was devastated. I was not just devastated, I was furious.
I bet.
And I spent the next 15 years proving him wrong, and I did.
Awesome. So what did you do next after then of course somebody knocks you off your block? I mean, what do you do mentally to prepare for, hey, I really want to have this goal, but somebody just told me that I probably can't ever achieve that? What did you do?
I don't think I knew what to do really then. I just went and rode more, and I didn't know anything else.
Did you ride harder? Did you get a coach? Did you do affirmations? I mean, what was the thing that you think kept you going? Because we all get that negative voice in our head. And sometimes it's just in our head, but a lot of times it's from people that are closest to us, a respected coach. It can be a parent. It can be a spouse. And they don't even really realize what they're saying is, go golf. And we're thinking, I'm never going to be a golfer. I want to be a cyclist. And so what did you have to do to overcome that voice? Yeah,
I mean, it was tough because someone I trusted and respected literally told me that I was a failure. Mm-hmm. Black and white. The test finished, and he didn't say a word. Packed up my stuff and went home. And I had really good people around me. I had my family, and I had my teammates, and I had that burning desire. I still didn't know what on earth I was doing.
Right.
So I just went and rode as much as I could.
Okay.
I went as far as I could. I could tell you stories for days about getting lost in the woods, riding hundreds and hundreds of miles.
Wow.
I started racing, and I got spit out the back. Like I was just the worst bike rider ever on my first race. I was so mad. I was like, I'm doing this. You cannot stop me.
So you had a coach tell you that you couldn't do it. Then you came in last in races.
I didn't even finish.
And
they made me stop. They're like, get out of here.
Oh my gosh.
I got dropped.
You had that little buggy that comes and picks you up.
The broom wagon.
Yeah, takes you to the finish line.
And in Belgium, there's a broom sticking off of it to sweep up the losers.
So why would you stay after that?
I didn't have a choice.
What do you mean you didn't have a choice? I mean, I'm being serious because this part, we did not talk about that part. What do you mean you didn't have a choice? I mean, that's the part where everybody else quits.
I had made a promise to myself.
I love it.
And to nobody else. Mm-hmm. And I didn't talk about it much to anybody. And my family was kind of confused. They said, we don't keep going, Bennet. You can achieve your dreams. What is he doing?
Yeah.
And I just went and trained and trained and trained. And I transformed my body, and I transformed my mind. So
were you in the gym and out on the road?
Yeah. So with swimming, I was training 2 days all the time.
Okay.
And I was sneaking in 3 days on the bike.
Wow.
My last 2 years of high school, I had taken a bunch of classes freshman and sophomore year, and I took 2 strength training classes out of my 5 I had in the day. So I was spending...
That's great.
I was doing 5-6 sessions a day.
Okay.
And I was young enough that it didn't destroy my body, and I grew stronger and stronger and stronger.
Cool.
And on the weekends, I'd go ride long. I got into ultra distance, so I would do 250-mile bike rides
Wow.
with this old group of guys in town.
So then how did you go from being this kid that was just super passionate about riding a bike, super passionate about being an athlete, to now I'm going to be a pro? Like, how did you get connected into the professional world of cycling?
So I had kind of a rough start, but I did have some innate physical talent. It wasn't in my VO2 max. It was in raw force, in peak power. So I found...
Raw force. That's a word that I think I'm going to use in almost any business that I run or talk about in the future is raw force, because I do think that sometimes pulls us through where our natural ability, and I call that really being on purpose about what you wanted. And we talk about that a lot in our business, which is moving from entrepreneurial to purposeful.
Yeah.
And that was you were on purpose during that point.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I was lucky enough that aspect of my sport life was recognized, and I started doing races that suited me better.
Okay.
So I had some folks recognize that in me, point me in that direction. I had some really good mentors, and I got on a team.
Cool.
And
What team?
It was Team Bloomington.
Awesome.
And they had a little junior development program, so it was some of the older guys in town, took me under their wing and showed me the ropes.
Cool.
And I started winning really fast. So I was the Indiana State champ when I was 17.
Wow.
And then it was like, okay, I think I can do this.
Yeah.
And I really, really believed at that point. So, I gave my parents a bit of a scare. I didn't apply for colleges, and I said, I'm doing this. And I was connected with the national team.
Every parent's dream.
Oh, they loved it. What are you going to do, Bennet? I'm going to Holland.
I'm going to ride my bike.
I'm going to ride my bike, live like kings.
Yeah.
So I was planning to do this race in Bermuda with the national team, and it got devastated by a hurricane. So Delta said, well, you can go wherever you want. And I said, I'm going to Holland.
Nice.
So I went and stayed with my family there,
Yeah.
and I started racing. And
What family still lived there? Was it your dad's side of the family?
So I had an uncle and cousins there.
Cool.
And I stayed on the couch and
Couch surfing.
That's
what all college students do anyway.
Right. So I worked in a TV repair shop, which was, I don't know anything about TVs. I'm not handy. I got electrocuted a bunch. But
So we're glad you're cycling.
right.
At this point,
Stick with the day job, right?
Yeah.
And I started getting destroyed in races again because those guys are so good. I went from being state champ to all of a sudden I was bottom of the barrel. Couldn't even hang. Broom wagon.
Yep.
And I just trained more.
Okay.
And harder. And
did you hire a coach during this time?
Yeah, I finally did. So I connected with a group in Belgium that was really a training facility for people doing what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
So I invested and put some cash down
Cool.
to live there. And I spent the rest of the year, and I started as one of the worst, and I ended up being one of the best about a year later.
I love it.
And the big change was learning all of the little things that I didn't know to do. I had raw talent, but it wasn't enough, wasn't even near enough.
Sure.
But I didn't know about nutrition. I didn't know about how to take care of your body, how to live diligently like a professional. And they taught me everything.
We see that in business all the time.
Yeah.
People get to a certain point and then they realize, well, I didn't really know how to do my finances. I didn't know that I needed to make sure I was taking care of that in taxes. I mean, all of this stuff is transferable into the business world. Really? I mean, do you see that piece now even?
I do. And those lessons, I wish I was so, for better or worse, I'm very strong-willed. And I didn't learn humility until after sport.
Okay.
So if I could go back and tell myself anything, it would be like, shut up and listen, and really listen. Save yourself some suffering.
Do it the way that people that have gone before you
Don't reinvent the wheel. It's there. Just walk the path, but walk it better than the other guy.
Yeah.
That's the way. So,
awesome.
Yeah, I was fortunate that I was with that group.
So a year later, you end at the top of your game with that group.
Yeah.
And then is that when you got picked up for a professional team?
Not yet.
Okay.
So I came back to the States and decided to get my degree and continue. I was self-aware just enough to know that I was good and I was going to go pro. I wasn't quite there.
Okay.
I had some work to do.
Okay.
So I went back and I ended up on a scholarship program and continued to race. And that's when I started winning collegiate national championships.
Nice.
Which was a great experience.
Mm-hmm.
And having that community of people was huge for me. And learning that guiding and leading others was a huge motivating factor for me. Pushed me even further.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. That's why you're such a great coach today.
And it's that I found it in real estate and in sales. I feel really fortunate about that.
I love that. Okay.
Yeah.
So you start winning collegiate races, and then what? When did the professional team come and say? Did they come knock on your door? How did How did that happen?
No, that was my first sales job actually. Is getting onto one of those teams.
Yeah.
There's a trade show in Vegas every year, and I would foot the bill and go out there with a stack of resumes.
So you paid for yourself to get out there. Yeah. So this is another part, is that in business, sometimes we find that people are kind of waiting for someone else to show up to send them to events. And what I love about your story is that you're constantly pushing to put yourself in front of those types of people so that you can get there, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I had to prove that coach wrong.
Right. Your VO2 results wrong.
And you know, at this point, I'm sure VO2 is more in the normal human range. Yeah, right. Anyway.
All right. So you go out to Vegas.
Yeah, and
you have to sell yourself.
A couple of years in a row, I'd come back empty-handed, and I was winning races. I was good, but you know, it's a pretty catty environment, cycling, unfortunately.
Okay.
And there are a few cities where it's really the hub of activity, like Boulder, Colorado. A ton of pros come from out of there.
Okay.
And I was killing those guys, but I didn't know anybody. So it's kind of a boys' club, and I was having trouble cracking in, so I just kept banging on the door until finally somebody gave me a chance. And I just killed it.
Imagine what the women are going through out there. You can cut this part if you want to.
Yeah.
You know, I mean...
Well, no. Talk about commercial real estate. You know, I do that as well, and I see it every day. Not all brokers,
it's a good old boys club,
Yeah.
And there's going to be a lot of women that watch this piece of our interview, and they're going to say, yeah, you know, I've had to go up against that quite a few times, and I get it. And I think that one of the things that we forget to realize is that even young guys that aren't part of this circle have those kind of challenges, because a lot of times it is who you know, not what you know, or even what races you won.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's pause for a minute and talk about how that feels.
Yeah.
It's awful.
Yeah.
It's that same feeling I had when somebody said black and white, you're not good enough, go play golf.
Yep.
So yeah, that you'll get that in business.
Yeah.
And in the world, and whatever you do with your life.
Shake it off and keep rolling.
Let's talk about haters, right?
Right.
There's no sport with more haters than cycling.
Oh, and I always say, if you don't have at least 2 haters, you're not doing your job fully.
Dozens.
Yeah.
Dozens of them.
Great. So you go, you market yourself, and then what happens? How does this professional team come about? I mean, it's just, what I want people to hear is that now that'll be the 3rd time. Like, I want to know about the professional, right?
Yeah.
And you're saying the road's still longer, Leann. The road's still longer.
The professional part was, right? That's the top of the mountain.
Right.
And when you think back, and when we talked about doing this, I had an opportunity to do that, think back through the history and the stories, and most of what I thought about was leading up to it.
Yeah.
And once you go pro,
I wish people would enjoy the journey instead of realizing that it's not the mountaintop. It's not the mountaintop. It's really the journey that is the fun part of the story.
Yeah. And that's like a poster on a wall somewhere. But listen up, kids.
Yeah,
it's true. Enjoy the ride.
Yeah.
So getting there. I had these posters on my wall when I was a kid, right? You know, posters of Lance, and I would watch these old VHS tapes of these races, and I was getting to do them. And I was finally pretty good. I got the proudest, I call it a win, that I ever had was 56th place at the Philly Grand Prix. I've been watching repeats of the same tape that Lance won at Philly since I was a kid, and I got to go. And I was just walking on air the whole time. You know, and it was 156 miles, about 100 degrees outside, and you got to go up this steep hill called the Manayunk Wall a dozen times, and there's thousands of people lined on either side, pouring beer on you, screaming, and I was just grinning ear to ear the whole time. I'm in Philly. So it was a huge experience, and that, you know, getting there, it was just such this weight off. You know, I made it, and I guess I did enjoy the ride.
Cool.
You know,
I love it.
Yeah.
So when did professional come around?
So it was my last year of college. I had won collegiate nationals. I was a defending champion of that, and I was winning. So in the States, they'll do pro-ams. So it'll be the pros plus the elite amateurs. And I was an elite amateur. So it's kind of like the minors.
Yep.
So I was spending some years in college in the minors of cycling. And, I was out in Vegas, pressing the flesh, pictures of me in my national champ jersey. And
I'm right here.
I got a chance, And that was my first sales job for sure. And that paid off.
Cool.
And that was I think the first year was the Inferno team, then became the Kenda team.
And
now
who's Kenda now, for the people that are watching this?
The 5 Hour Energy Pro Cycling.
Okay, and everybody knows what 5 Hour, everybody knows what 5 Hour Energy is. And so, sometimes that'll kind of let people know, like, what a big deal that was at the time. Yeah,
so I spent a couple years on the pro circuit, and that was a lot more learning. And that was another level. When it's pro only, the speeds these people are capable of and getting an exposure.
What's your mindset at this point? I mean, did you go to a place where here you are, you're a professional cyclist? I mean, you've finally been picked up by a pro team. Did you start having doubts about yourself during that time? No, but I made a ton of mistakes. Okay. I still had a lot of self-confidence, and I knew I had still the burning drive. And the mistake I made was getting away from the fundamentals of what got me there. Mm-hmm. I thought, okay, I've gone away, and one issue I had was trying very hard to emulate what I thought I ought to be. Yeah. Which was 150 pounds and a climber. Mm-hmm. I'm a big guy. I'm Dutch, right? I'm 6'2", and my natural body was about 200. Yeah. So I was literally starving myself for years. Okay. It's really hard on your body, really hard on your mind. Okay. And that's common in cycling. It's a sport, they say, that eats its young. Ah. And it does. Okay. So I got away from that in college and grew more powerful, and I'd become a really good sprinter. I was dangerous. Raw. What was the word I was using? Raw force. Raw force. That was my ace in the hole. Hashtag raw force. That's what we're going to talk about today. Yeah.
So I got away from that. Yeah. And I said, okay, I'm pro now. It's time to get skinny. And I went and holed up in a trailer park in the desert in Arizona for 4 months and would ride 7 to 8 hours a day.
Oh my gosh.
And I would just eat salads and stuff.
Oh my gosh.
And I got really skinny. And I was still good.
Is that for speed? I mean, why do they want you to be...
efficiency. Yeah. So again, if you go back to the VO2, it's basically weight, versus power you produce, and the oxygen you consume creates speed. So you bring your weight down, VO2 and power stay similar, you're going to go faster. Okay. So I was trying to reduce my weight and keep my power the same, but my power dropped off. And I wasn't listening to my mentors who were saying, Bennet, get back in the gym, do some squats. Yeah. So I went from a powerful, winning amateur to a pro, and I started kind of backsliding, and I was, I don't know if too proud or I thought I knew better. Ego
gets in the way of a lot of our success, right? We get up to a certain level and all of a sudden the ego kicks in, and the ego will actually, like, if cycling eats its young, so does ego, right? Yeah. It always does.
Yes. Yeah. So that'd be the thing I would have done a little differently there, would be just focus on my wheelhouse and what made me good and what got me there. Okay. Because I became, instead of a top 5 in first place or last, which is really what I believe I should have been doing, I was kind of 20th and 30th all the time.
Just mid-range.
Just mid-pack, pack fill, and that's the last thing I ever want to be.
Sure.
So that I would have done that differently, but not much else.
Yeah. So mentally, what do you have to be doing with mentally every single day just to pull yourself up to do 7 hours of riding in the desert and eating no food, and you have all these things that you've seen in the past because you've watched these videos. You had mentors, you had coaches telling you to do something different, but you just thought that you knew better, so you were doing this over here. I mean, what's happening to you mentally during all of this so that you ended up pulling through and you had some more successes after that?
It makes you frail. Yeah. It makes you brittle.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can be anything in life or sport, it's resilient. Mm-hmm. And, there were definitely some tough times there.
I bet.
And think about putting yourself in just a calorie deficient state. Anybody out there who's doing fitness shows, for instance, think about the last 3 weeks of competition.
They're so grumpy.
They're terrible. And
I'm grumpy if I
that way.
Don't have 2 dinners.
Right.
So,
so I had these little tiny T-Rex arms, and I was hangry all the time, and it affected my personal relationships. And to tie that into what we do now, and anybody out there in the professional world, absolutely listen to the people around you. Even if you think you're smarter than them, you're probably not.
Yeah, because you haven't rode as many miles as they have, or sold as many whatever widgets that they have.
Or even if you are super, super elite, your perspective is not going to be true.
Yeah.
And you need people around you. We're built for community, human beings, and you have to listen.
I love it. Yeah. There's actually a podcast about that talks about being anonymous and actually pulling away from community, and how that can actually hurt you in the future. And so I'll make sure that I post that as well for this. So you went pro with the Kenda team. We know that. And you won some medals. Tell us a little bit about that piece.
Yeah. So I graduated college, and I was full professional athlete at this point. And I'd spent my walled-in winter in the desert training like a crazy person in these mountains. And because I had won some collegiate track cycling medals, I got a call out of the blue from a group that was heading down to represent the U.S. in Trinidad and Tobago, and I jumped on it. I was super excited.
I would have too.
Yeah. So it was a group of Americans, a couple of Germans, some Jamaican guys, but it was an elite international track match. And Trinidad's kind of wild. We were under armed guard the whole time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, lock and key is pretty wild.
Wow.
But the guys I was with, we had a really good team. It was me, Jimmy Watkins, who ended up representing the U.S. in the Olympics, and a couple other guys. And Jimmy ended up getting the gold medal, and I supported him. We were fighting a little bit, and then we had kind of a side meeting, and he was a little better than me that year, And our coach said, Bennet, you got to back him up. So I ended up playing second fiddle and helping Jimmy win. And I ended up getting the bronze.
Nice.
And that was one I was real proud of too.
I love that.
Yeah.
All right. So then you're 26 years old. You're pretty beat up by being on the circuit. You've been in the pro circuit for a while at this point, and you're ready to hang it up. What was the feeling like when you decided, hey, I'm retiring from professional sports?
I think burnout, it's something, it's hard to see it coming. And I had been on such a steep path really my whole life.
And here's what I want to point out too, is that a lot of professional athletes don't understand how short-lived their careers will be.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about, what you've done since then, which has also been nothing short of remarkable. But a lot of professional athletes out there, and I love interviewing professional athletes for this reason, because they don't understand that there's a timeline of what your body can handle. So at 26, were you devastated that you had to hang it up?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I was. And let me pause and go back to some of the reasons and what it was really like just for my physical body. In cycling, we crash a lot, and it's a very aggressive sport. People don't realize you're headbutting,
I would have never
elbowing, knocking each other off the bike, and we're going fast. We're going 40 miles an hour. So think about this. Get a minivan and open the door, put on some underpants.
Just roll out.
And jump out and roll around on the concrete.
Okay.
Now do that with 100 people and a bunch of bicycles with spiky gears and all, you're on a mountainside.
Yeah.
It's super dangerous, and I crashed a lot. I broke a lot of bones.
Wow.
I got a lot of road rash.
I would never have guessed that. I mean, before we sat down together, I wouldn't have guessed that you crashed.
I know, everybody thinks, just
I
the
just
little
think you're
shorts,
just riding.
right?
Yeah. It's just the shorts and the bike.
No,
right?
it's one of the toughest parts. And, for anybody who does motocross or cyclists or whatever, when you have road rash, it's a big load on your body. Like, let's say you lose a square foot area, if you lose all the skin on your back. Happened to me in Vegas one year. We was doing a race, and the road was filthy. And it removed all the skin from my back and replaced it with filthy, filthy dirt. And I picked up the MRSA staph infection. I ended up in the ER.
Okay.
They had me on a couple different rounds of antibiotics over the course of a year, on and off. And once they figured out it was this really tough strain, I had a super high fever, ended up in the ER at night.
Yeah.
And, my body overcame that, and I continued racing, but it was tough on me.
Okay.
along with...
And what a lot of people think is that they would watch you, let's say on TV, or they watch you get your bronze medal, and here they're thinking, you know, oh, I want to be that person. Well, are you willing to go through a staph infection? Are you willing to go through broken bones? Are you willing to be in the ER? Because that's what success takes. And so often people think that the road is just this super smooth road, like me. I mean, I'm thinking, okay, so you're a cyclist. Tell me about that. And you're like, yeah. So let me rip off the back of your back.
Let's see how you feel about that.
And see, if you really think that that's glamorous, right?
There's no greater direct correlation in my mind than cycling as having to just fight through failure, literally falling on your face and breaking it and bleeding to win. I think before I won my first national championship, I lost 30, and I think, oh man, I was so close. The year before I won my first one, I crashed within 200 feet of winning and got 80th. I was about to win, and somebody knocked me off my bike, and I lost all my skin.
Oh my gosh.
Smashed my bike, had to get a new one. So I picked myself up, and I got really mad.
Oh my gosh.
And I got third the next day.
Okay, good.
With 3 broken ribs.
I love it.
Yeah.
Fighter. So you hang it up at 26, and how long did it take you to really be able to overcome, hey, I used to be a professional athlete, and now I have to go be a professional business person? And
that was a bit of a transition. The first thing I did was I called my dad and my brother, who were really instrumental. They were such a big part of it. I said, guys, I think I got to stop. And I almost was apologetic because they'd been side by side with me. And I felt like I was letting all these people down, and I wasn't.
Yeah.
So they 100% supported me. And I walked right down to the grocery store and got a 6-pack of beer and a bunch of donuts.
The cure-all!
I'm quitting, I'm done. So it was a big transition then into the professional world. I was working at the Gold's Gym, teaching spin class, and I started selling gym memberships. And then I ended up going to work for a former sponsor. And what I found was the things that made me a great athlete made me a great salesperson.
That's awesome.
I was pretty rough around the edges, but it was the same thing. And it was the same things I've been doing for years served me. I just had to translate those skills and polish them.
So your first year as a realtor, so you actually walked straight into real estate and you got into commercial sales, which is pretty hard. I mean, we talked about overcoming the stigmas of, that's an old guys group that really doesn't like new people coming in on it. And you walked in your first year as a commercial realtor and you sold 16 million.
Yeah.
That's unheard of even for, new agents coming in, and 16 million is huge. So what do you think really pushed you that year? Like, what was the difference?
I think the difference in my athletic career versus my professional career is somewhere along the line there I learned humility, and I learned to have a student mindset and to shut up and listen.
I love it. So, your first year in the cycling world, you were like, so I'm last in the pack. And then here you come in the real estate world, and you just, bam, knocked it out of the park. And so did you have a coach during that time, or did you have a mentor?
I had great mentorship, and I put in the time.
That's awesome.
I think to achieve the 16 million in the first year, I didn't take a day off, and I did, between 12 and 16 hours a day, including weekends.
Okay. Is there anything else that was really tough on you as you went through from when you became a professional athlete to today that you want to share with people and you really want people to know about, so that when they're having a tough day, when they're not sure if their business will work, when they're getting the skin ripped off their back, when they're in the hospital, what do you need to do to push through? What advice do you want to give people?
I think on my best days, when I'm really performing well, it's when I'm most authentic to who I am and to myself.
I love it.
And when I stopped cycling, I had kind of a few crisis years just as a person, because I went from this thing that I'd wanted to be for so long, and I achieved it and became it, and I was Bennet pro cyclist, and I loved being that. And then I had to give it back, and I felt like nothing. And it took me a couple years to figure out that it was just false.
Yep.
So
titles are false.
They mean nothing.
Yep.
They mean nothing. And when you embrace that and you approach sales or your world or whatever you do with humility, the response you get back is tenfold. more positive than if you come in all swagger and ego. People can see through it. They know the difference. You got to be yourself, and you got to be your best self.
Awesome. Well, I have our final question, and that, I checked with your publicist. It's okay if I ask this question.
Okay.
Or maybe they don't know. I'm going to ask the question for all the ladies out there. Are you single?
I am currently single.
He's single, everybody. He's single. So thank you so much for taking the time to interview with me today. I love your story. I'm super excited. And I hope that it lends a lot of inspiration for those of you that are out there having a struggle of getting into your business world. Understand that people have gone before you. Listen to your mentors and reach out to Bennet if you have any questions. Have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.